All right, well, good morning. Welcome, Head Start family. I am Malkia Payton-Jackson, the Director of Alumni Engagement with the National Head Start Association and proud Head Start alumna. I am so happy to be with you today and bringing you this pre-recorded session, Finding Connection in a Galaxy Far, Far Away. Right now, I have the distinct pleasure of introducing you to the Yarde family. The Yarde family are the creators and producers of the weekly podcast, Father and Son, a Star Wars podcast. Father and Son is a family-oriented series, and it is really stemming from the father and son moments between Kerwin and Keith Yarde, where they discuss all things Star Wars. And so the channel is garnering a lot of publicity. It's getting some media attention. The channel just achieved its 300 subscriber milestone. It's attracting shout outs from Star Wars cast members, including Mark Hamill, who of course is the legendary Luke Skywalker. So welcome, Yarde family. I'm so happy to have you with us today. How are you? I'm glad to see you.
Thank you.
Nice to see you.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Of course, of course. And so for all of our viewers, I want to just go through a round of introductions so they can get to know you a little bit better. And so I'll start with Mr. Kerwin. Mr. Kerwin Yarde, of course, he works in finance, but he is the proud parent of Keith and Maceo Yarde. He's also the co-creator of the Father and Son podcast. And so, Kerwin, welcome. Thank you again for being here. And what fun fact would you like to share with Head Start?
Well, we don't take ourselves seriously. I for one, I love being a dad, and I love my family, and we do hang out a lot together. So we sometimes, are so close that we finish each other's sentences. So
Wow.
that would be the fun fact that I can give you for that.
That is awesome. That is awesome. So glad to have you here with us today, Kerwin. And with Kerwin, we have Keith. Keith Yarde. Hi, Keith. How are you? Thank you so much for being here today. Keith, it's my understanding that you are in 4th grade. Is that right?
Yep.
Great. You're in 4th grade. And it's also my understanding that you attended Head Start. You went to the Montclair Child Development Corporation in Montclair, New Jersey. Is that right?
Yep, MCDC.
MCDC, that's right, where Miss Tanya Poteet is the executive director. She is the one that made me aware about you and your wonderful family. And she also shared with me that you were one of their special guest speakers during their 50th birthday celebration. Is that right?
Yeah.
That is all. How was that? Were you nervous? Were you nervous to do that?
Nope.
No, wow. I am very impressed.
Okay, say it again.
Say that again.
I got to eat all the shrimp afterwards.
Well, that is a wonderful benefit of being a guest speaker. So it is a pleasure to meet you. Thank you for being and talking with us today, Keith. And we have next to Keith, wonderful Maceo Yarde. Maceo, hello. Glad to have you with us today.
Maceo, can you say hello?
Fish bump.
Fist bump. He said fist bump. Okay.
All right.
There we go.
All right. All right, Maceo. Fist bump. Awesome. I love it. I love it. And finally, and rounding out the crew is Miss Tanya Manning Yarde. Tanya, welcome. Thank you so much for being with us. And Tanya, for our folks to know in Head Start that you also attended Head Start. You are an alumna like myself. You attended in New York. And you're also, in addition to being the wonderful mother of Keith and Maceo and the life partner of Kerwin, you're also an author, you're an educator, you're an editor. What else should we know about Miss Tanya Yarde?
Oh my gosh. I'm also a fabulous cook. I can throw down in the kitchen very well.
So Thanksgiving must have been something special, I'm sure.
Yes, it was.
Awesome.
Yes, it was just a little something, but yes, it was.
Awesome.
So many.
Well, we're so glad to have all of you here. And, you know, as I mentioned, there is a Head Start connection. Tanya, you went to Head Start. Not Maceo, excuse me. Keith, you also attended Head Start. But also the beauty is when we talk about family connections, Head Start is all about strengthening families. And so when I heard about this story of the podcast that you produced, I thought, what a wonderful example of family engagement, family togetherness, family finding opportunities to connect with one another, but also with other families. By broadcasting this podcast, you've actually invited people into your family as you engage around this topic that's so important and meaningful to you. And I think that's the beauty of family engagement, is that we don't have to limit it to just the nuclear family. We can expose others to that interaction as well. And so can you guys tell me a little bit about, and I'll ask you, Tanya, specifically, what made you think that there was an opportunity for a podcast?
I think one of the things that was the impetus for the podcast was that once we were in the pandemic and in lockdown, everybody was confined to the residence, and it was a great, when I say great, not that anything, the pandemic being forced indoors is great, but it gave us an opportunity to spend a lot more time with one another than sometimes our schedules would allow. With Kerwin's job, sometimes working long hours, it would be challenging to spend time together during the weekdays. With Maceo has several hours. Maceo is diagnosed with autism and has a lot of different therapies that would happen after school. And so sometimes we would not get home until after 7 on most weekdays. And so that left very little time for us to really spend together as a family other than the weekend. But now with the pandemic, both of the boys were in virtual learning. Kerwin was working from home. I was already home. So it was a great opportunity for us to spend more time together. What we begun doing, particularly during like our meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, or in particular more so Kerwin and Keith, is because both of them were Star Wars fans. They began talking a lot more about Star Wars, and I would listen to their conversations, and they would just be so insightful and just really going in deep. And listening to their conversations and seeing the way the two of them bonded around that, and began making me think, you know, one, this is a great thing for us as a family, our nuclear family, to keep doing continually. And two, other people need to see that. Other families who are trying to figure out how to spend time together, how to bond together, how to keep each other together, need to see what we're doing in our own humble ways, so that one, it gives them affirmation that every family out here during this pandemic is trying to figure this out. And two, here's one way we're doing it based on a common interest in the family as expressed by Kerwin and Keith. And so I had taped them one time of their interviews in which they were talking about The Mandalorian, and I uploaded that to Facebook, and it got over 100 views and all type of, oh my gosh, this was great to see. This is really, you know, keep doing it. You know, that type of affirmative recognition for, wow, their conversation and ways they're spending time together. And then that pretty much generated as the impetus for then us starting the podcast.
You know, Kerwin and Keith, you all have that special connection. Like Tanya said, around Star Wars, you both really love it. You're avid fans. And tell me a little bit about what it is about Star Wars that draws you. Why do you like it and love it so much?
Why?
Well, I've been a longtime fan of Star Wars. My first Star Wars film was back in 1980. I went to see The Empire Strikes Back. And 3 years later was Return of the Jedi. And I always say, whenever I'm talking about Star Wars, that was the most exciting moment I've ever had going to see a film. And that was 1983 with myself and 2 of my buddies from Brooklyn. We traveled to Manhattan to go to the movie theater because we wanted to go to the best movie theater around in that area. And we just had a blast. And, you know, we waited in line for a long time, but once we got in and heard the music and the visuals and the sound, everything else, we were just in another place. Yeah, and it's been like that for a long time, but there was a time when we didn't have any Star Wars. And I really didn't have anything Star Wars related to speak to Didn't have anybody else who I knew were Star Wars fans to talk about. Keith was born in 2011.
At the end of it.
At the end of 2011. In
Mhm.
2012 is when we heard that Disney was going to buy Lucasfilm and that they were going to make the sequel trilogy.
Right.
I felt excited again. Oh, okay, well, this is very interesting. And of course, Disney and Lucasfilm, they're very great with their marketing. I was in the bookstore one day and I saw the little golden books of the first 6 Star Wars movies.
Mhm.
I just brought them home, picked them up, brought them home to Tanya, and I said, well, you think Keith will be interested in it? And she said, go ahead and give him the books to see what happens. He read the books, he loved it. He was ready to watch the movies, and then that's where we've been ever since. So I've been a long time fan of Star Wars.
Wow. And Keith, tell me, what is it that you love so much about Star Wars?
To make it a short answer, everything from the characters to the heroes to the villains to the battles to all the ships. It's
There's
just
so much.
there's always something new about Star Wars that you get to see. Like, even though we've already had 3 trilogies, what's to say there won't be a 4th? We've got the High Republic coming out. We've got all these other subplot books. We've got new toys. It's amazing. It's really a wonder that they can do this.
Kerwin, let us know here. How is it that you secure? You've had a few guests I've seen from your episodes. You've had a few really top-notch guests. What does it take? What are you doing to invite these guests and get these guests to participate?
Mm-hmm. Well, when we started this podcast, I had an idea of certain people I wanted to have on the podcast. And the first guest I wanted to have on the podcast was a gentleman named Mark Daniel. It just turns out that Tanya and his wife had, they were students back in the Bronx. They're elementary school students. So it just so happens that, these 2 ladies married 2 Star Wars nerds. I just thought it was just a great opportunity to have Mark on the podcast and just talk about his life story and just talk about his journey to starting off working for Disney and where he is now. And then as far as the other ones, we were looking for people who we really had an interest in speaking with, who had a personal connection with us, as far as maybe authors, books that we have read, that we felt very passionate about, and we wanted to have these writers on our podcast to talk to. So Keith is the avid reader, and he read a series of books called Adventures in Wild Space, which is a 7-book series written by 2 authors, Kevin Scott and Tom Huddleston. So after he introduced me to the books and I read them, I said, these books are awesome. We need to reach out to the authors, and we did get a response back from one of them, Tom Huddleston, and we were able to book him on the show as well. So basically what we do is we just talk about who do we want to interview, what's the topic going to be about, and then it's just as simple as actually just reaching out to their publicists, or even some of them we can reach out to them directly and send them an email, introduce ourselves, provide them a copy of our media kit, and then we just wait to hear back whether they're interested or not. Mm-hmm. These books are fantastic. So I am so glad that we've come to this point now.
Yep. And the books were co-written by Kevin Scott, and now our special guest, Tom Huddleston, and also one of my favorite authors.
All right. Tom, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, I'm absolutely thrilled to be here. My name's Tom Huddleston. This is Jonah Hope Huddleston. It's a father and son podcast, so
yes, it is.
It made sense to have a little cameo from this guy here.
Welcome.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much. All right.
So what is it that you love about Tom Huddleston and the books that he's authoring?
Well, yes, Adventures in Wild Space is my favorite series.
All right. And what's so great about that series?
Just show one of the books, just one.
Well,
that's one of the books.
It's about these kids who go on an outer space adventure.
Yeah.
Their parents get lost. So the entire series is these two kids, Lena and Milo, their droid crater and their pet monkey Lizard Moore, trying to go all across the galaxy to find their parents again.
Awesome. That is an adventure. Tanya, you mentioned this. The literacy component that you bring into the podcast, I love that. You highlight books, you bring in authors, you do read alouds. So Tanya, tell me about that. You've added that component, I believe. Has it been recently that you added the read aloud component?
Yes, we've added that past for about a few weeks ago. Harkening back to us being a family of readers, I wanted to think of an opportunity where we could showcase that in real time. Kerwin and Keith have covered a vast amount of books. I mean, they read any and everything Star Wars related, and we wanted to try to think about, well, what's the way that we can then also encourage people to read to their children. And so thinking about, in the sense of my own background as a teacher, and then also thinking about my family's interest in reading, was thinking about, okay, well, let's try reading books on the podcast and doing two things with doing that. One, modeling that, and also offering selections that people can then look for to read to their own young children. So
Right.
with Maceo now taking an interest in reading, we were trying to find an array of books that he would be interested in. So some of those books, all Star Wars related, but some of them,
Right.
for example, golden little golden books, the world of reading, the different leveled reading books. And Kerwin and Keith have now taken on the reading of those books on the podcast to be able to affirm of how important reading is, and also in reading to your children, bonding as a family. And we've begun
Right.
to see that among some of our highest rated or highest most viewed episodes are the ones that feature Kerwin and Keith reading aloud to Maceo. So clearly there's something that we're harnessing here, but we've
Yeah.
also touched in our viewership, and we're
Yeah.
hoping that it expands opportunities to read to other families, and by implication they're reading to their kids, because even though we're a Star Wars podcast, we're promoting the reading to young children by family members, regardless of the particular literature that you're using.
That's right.
My family have been very supportive. I don't think it's a surprise to them because they know how long I've been a Star Wars fan. So
Yeah.
when they heard the idea of me starting a podcast with Keith about Star Wars, I think they looked at it as, oh, makes sense to me, you know.
Right.
Like you said, as far as reaching out to other families, because of our podcast, we have actually found other father and son podcasts who
Yeah.
do the same thing. They talk about Star Wars. And one family in particular reached out to us and say, hey, we love your show. Would you like to be a guest on it? And, you know, we have actually been guests on each other's podcasts, and, you know, we just have a blast, you know, just talking about Star Wars. You know, Todd Hoffman and his son is, I believe,
Was that TNT? Was that the
yeah,
TNT
Big T and Little
podcast?
T. Big T.
Yeah.
And, you know, his son is maybe about 8 years old. And, you know, we just have a blast just listening to them talk Star Wars from their perspective. And we're talking about it from our perspective. It's a lot of fun. Absolutely a lot of fun.
I think one of the things, looking at the other side of it, from the feedback we've gotten with people who have posted comments on the Apple Podcasts and other places like on Facebook and Twitter, is that they really also appreciate seeing Keith and Kerwin as a family.
That's
Now,
right.
being candid, one of the things that I can say for me personally that I really appreciate about this podcast, and not because I'm a part of it, but just as a mother, is also seeing a father and son bond together. And
Right.
it's being even more candid, seeing a father and son who are of color, who are Black, bonding, and that the
Right.
narrative is not a negative narrative in terms of how Black men and Black boys, Black fathers and Black sons are depicted all too often in certain negative ways. That here
Mm-hmm.
we have a wholesome bonding between a father and son
That's
around
right.
books,
Right.
around Star Wars, around characters, around plots. I mean, the level of sophistication that these two talk about
Yeah.
books, it just makes me feel that much more pride. And not just because Keith is my son,
Mhm.
but in seeing this 9-year-old
Yeah,
talk about Star Wars on these levels and seeing him write story beats, seeing him interview people, seeing him revise and edit and re-edit our footage. It's
yeah,
just the way in which these two engage with each other and are willing to share that with the audience is something that the audience picks up on also and says. Some of the comments I was reading, we got a recent review on November 22nd to the effect of, like, people are saying, I've never even seen anything like this. The way a
yeah,
father and son bond around Star Wars and the way their camaraderie, their love,
yeah.
is something else that I really like seeing, and I think is a draw as well for our audience.
Absolutely. I completely agree. It was a draw for me, and for all the reasons that you named, that I love the camaraderie between Kerwin and Keith. Keith, let me ask you, what do you most enjoy about creating this podcast? What do you like the most?
Well, if there's one thing I like the most, it's the editing.
It's the editing? Yeah.
Get all these awesome slides from online and then fix them up and put them in and then cut the video and add the video. Now, here's a funny story. When we first started doing the podcast, what I had to do was import the file from Google Drive and get the audio file, cut it exactly where I want to put the slide in, then add the audio, recalibrate the audio, cut the audio, make the audio foreground, cut the audio so that it's where I wanted it to be, move the audio, and then cut the rest of the audio.
Wow. So, Keith, I'm going to tell you right now, I don't know what any of that means, but it sounds really important. So, Yarde family, I'm going to close out our conversation with one question that I want each of you to answer if you can. What's next? What is the next chapter for Father and Son podcast, or just for the Yarde family in general? What do you see on the horizon?
Well, I actually have a new idea that I haven't told anybody about yet.
Okay. All right. So do you want to broadcast that here? Do you want to premiere that idea?
Yes.
All right, go ahead.
Do it. Mom and Dad, are you committed?
We'll see. We'll need to hear it
Yes,
first.
good. So,
It already sounds like it requires a lot of cash. Okay.
actually, no, it doesn't. I was gonna say we could do a new episode series like from the archives, our discussion of so and so, like the Mandalorian or the Bad Batch. Because you know how Mom keeps these archives of all the things we did and all the videos which we don't even know about because we didn't know Mommy was standing there in the shadows with the camera.
I love it.
No, keep talking. Act like I'm not here.
So you could actually put together like almost like your blooper reels, right? Or behind
Yeah,
the
we've done
scenes.
that.
Yeah. I love that.
I would want for us to be in a position where we're one of the premier places where people can get their information on Star Wars. So if there's any breaking news or any any events or conventions that we're attending that's related to Star Wars, we want to be there behind the scenes.
That means we have to get up at the crack of dawn.
Well, be there behind the scenes to get the interviews,
Right.
get the latest scoop. So that's what we're looking at.
In terms of the immediate future, I'm looking forward to how in fact, we had like a kind of impromptu meeting this morning where we're looking now to also be interviewing, in addition to authors, people who are also involved in the Star Wars universe in terms of musical scoring, music, composition, performance, audio, visual, people who are involved in special effects. Also continuing on with the expanding ways to promote and encourage literacy and reading together as families.
Yeah.
I'm working on a collection of children's books and using main characters who are neurodiverse as a way to bring awareness to neurodiversity and autism, and also finishing up the drafting of a middle grade novel I've been working on that's based in part, not even just, but based, actually more in part, based on Keith and Macio's experiences as brothers and what that is like in trying to um, build family, build relationship, build connections while also coming into one's own talents and
Right.
also supporting a young, in the case of the book, as well as what Keith does in many respects in real life, supporting a sibling coming into their own talents and helping them to come to fruition while also navigating a world which may not often be welcoming
Right.
and inviting of that particular individual or
Right.
child in particular. We're trying to still promote in telling different stories about who we are as a family, who we are as a people, and trying to promote other families to do the same.
Well, I know that there is nothing but goodness and success ahead for the Yarde family. And I want to thank each and every one of you. I want to thank Maceo. I want to thank you, Keith. I want to thank you, Kerwin. And I want to thank you, Tanya, for agreeing to spend this time with me and share your story with the Head Start family. I know the Head Start family has enjoyed meeting all of you and hearing about you and about the good things that you're doing to support family growth and family development. So, Head Start family, please be sure to check out Father and Son, a Star Wars podcast, wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Be sure to subscribe on their YouTube channel and like them on Facebook. And Yarde family, thank you again for being here, and may the force continue to be with you.
Thank you so much. Same to you.
Thank
This was a
you.
pleasure. Thank
We
you.
thank you so much. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too. Take care.